Hello and welcome to this live event where we're going to, I'm very much looking forward to hearing from people across the North Isles of Orkney talking about their heritage. So I think we're very privileged to get a ground eye view and opinions of what really makes these fascinating places tick. This is part of I'm Alan Miller, I'm from the University of St Andrews, and I'm going to hand over to Anne-Marie Reid, who's going to tell us a little bit about the Cupido project, which is hosting this map. So we'll give you a link later on, the interactive map, which is showing a lot of the content that is part of this project. Anne-Marie.
Great. Thank you very much, Alan. Ian, I've got a few slides, if you don't mind putting those up. And just while Ian is doing that, thank you everybody for joining today's Orkney North Isles live digital heritage event. And my name is Anne-Marie Reid and I work with Highlands and Islands Enterprise. And I work as a project manager, and part of my role is currently overseeing HI's involvement in the Cupido Interreg Cultural Heritage Project, along with the University of St Andrews. And the reason that we're making reference to the Cupido Interreg project is that it's through this project, which I will go on just to explain in a bit more detail about, has resulted in us working on a specific digital heritage project with the North Isles Landscape Partnership Scheme and community organisations and cultural heritage centres across the Orkney North Isles. So I am going to provide just a very brief overview about the Cupido Interreg project, and then followed by a brief overview of the digital heritage project that we're currently working on with our Orkney North Isles community groups and culture organisations. So Cupido stands for Culture Power, Inspire to Develop Rural Areas, and it's funded through the Interreg North Sea Region programme. Ian, if you could move on to the next slide, please. And the Interreg North Sea Region programme is funded through the EU, and you'll see here just a map of the North Sea region area. And the countries that are on the map, we've got Norway, Sweden, the Netherlands, Germany, we've got the UK and Belgium, are all eligible to apply to the programme. And the programme itself, it works to these 4 overarching priorities that you see on the slide there, which are thinking growth, eco-innovation, sustainable North Sea region, and green transport and mobility. Next slide, please, Ian. So the Cupido, Ian, I think you might have jumped a slide. Is there? It does be. Perhaps not. So the Cupido project, its overarching aim is to support economic and social development opportunities within the cultural sector. And the project itself, it's also looking at exploring different business models within the cultural sector. And the partnership, it has a total of 16 partners from all 7 regions around the North Sea. So the partnership, our lead partner is a Swedish organisation. It's a public sector organisation called Regional Värmland. And the partnership, it comprises a mix of public sector organisations, culture organisations, universities and public sector. And all partners, all the partners that are eligible to participate in the programme are partners that are located in rural regions. So it's through with the Cupido project, it allows all partners to work on a Pacific cultural development project in their region. So in the Highlands and Islands region, this has led to Highlands and Islands Enterprise working with St Andrews University on a digital heritage project. And our project, it's broken into two main strands. The first strand is around digital heritage skills, and we've been delivering a programme of digital heritage skills workshops. We delivered workshops last year, and we'll be looking to deliver further workshops this year. But for today's presentation, I'll maybe just focus more on the other strand of the project, which is our digital adoption strand of the project. And it's the digital adoption strand of the project is where we're working with a group of cultural or heritage organisations across the Highlands and Islands region on a Pacific digital heritage project. And the majority of those projects are looking at relevant technologies within the cultural heritage sector that support ways to exhibit heritage in new ways and looking at providing a digital interactive heritage experience. And the organisations that we're working with are looking at digital for a range of like different purposes. Some organisations, it's very much around sort of generating additional income for their organisations. Other organisations, it's around promotion and preservation of heritage. And for other organisations, it's around how they can market their heritage offering more online. So through the digital adoption strand of the project led to the North Isles Landscape Partnership Scheme applying to participate in the project. And that in turn has led to us working on the Orkney North Isles virtual reality project. And this project, it's looking at the role of VR technologies to help promote, preserve Orkney's North Isles very, very sort of unique cultural heritage offering. And as you see there, just on the map, you'll see the North Isles communities that we're working with. And obviously you will be hearing from some of our community organisations and cultural centres just in a moment. So if you could move on to the next slide. Thanks, Ian. So the project that we're doing with the Orkney North Isles communities and heritage organisations is very much sort of led by the local communities, who have been doing an absolutely fantastic job and particularly working around the challenges of last year with all the coronavirus restrictions around sourcing content for the virtual reality exhibit. And all our communities have been very active in gathering, in using our 360 degree cameras to gather 360 degree film and photograph material of their local cultural offering for the VR exhibit. And they've shared the material with St Andrews, and St Andrews are now working to develop an interactive VR exhibit using the material that's been sourced by each local community. So I'm now going to look to hand over to Valerie Dawson from the North Isles Landscape Partnership Scheme, who's going to provide an overview of the work of the partnership scheme. And then Valerie is then going to introduce each of our local speakers for this afternoon's event, who are then going to be just sharing a bit of their very fascinating and very unique local cultural heritage. So if I can pass over to you, Valerie.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. I have a couple of slides too, I think, Ian, if you could put them up for us, that would be grand. I'm not going to say very much. There's loads I could say because the Landscape Partnership Scheme involves such a wide variety of projects, but I think everybody's probably here to hear directly for the North Isles and learn about the North Isles heritage. So I'll keep this as brief as I can. I'll just introduce myself. I'm a project officer with the North Isles Landscape Partnership Scheme. There's me as a project officer, there's my colleague Anne, another project officer, there's manager Andy Golightly, and we have an admin and finance officer, Mary Keenan. We're all based in Kirkwall but working at home obviously at the moment. For anybody that's joining us that's not so familiar with Orkney, we're speaking about the 10 inhabited islands that lie just north of what we recognise as the Orkney mainland. And it's the distinct character of the landscape across the North Isles of Orkney that defines the scheme area. And although there's very distinct and different, there is a kind of shared history and identity, a connectedness between the islands, relationships that have existed for generations and still exist to do so. And it's that kind of shared identity that's also helped define the scheme boundaries as well. The partnership is our main funder, the National Lottery Heritage Fund, but it's also the council here in Orkney, Highlands and Islands Enterprise, Historic Environment Scotland, Nature Scot and RSPB. It's a 5-year project in total. Officially we're in year 3, but I kind of feel like we've effectively lost the whole year, and I think it looks like we'll probably get an extension to the project. But essentially, the project is about protecting, enhancing and promoting the natural, built and cultural heritage of the North Isles. And I'm just going to run through a couple of slides on different themes just to give you a flavour of the types of projects that we'll be taking forward. If I move on to the first one, it's looking at the natural heritage. The aim is to increase wildlife recording and surveying, and a lot of that will hopefully happen through events, activities and training, which hasn't really been able to happen yet. There was a whole series of events planned as lockdown happened last year. There's some things that's been added to our website that people can use to find a bit more, but hopefully as restrictions start to ease, we'll be picking up on those. There's specific recording projects that are to do with, for example, the Flappers Gate that has a particular stronghold here in the waters around Orkney, and a study into otter populations across the North Isles, which hasn't really been studied to any great extent previously. There's a virtual dive website that should be being launched quite soon, I hope, and that is really just showcasing the unique marine habitat around the North Isles, highlighting some of the marine protected areas, and it will cover things like the marl beds, the sea life, kelp beds, seabirds and otters. And there's a project that's really about highlighting special wild places in each of the islands, and that will be done in a variety of ways depending on how it's decided to be done in each island. It could be something in a heritage centre where folk can go in and learn and engage more, or it might be, for example, interpretation boards in the landscape that tell you about a specific area. If I move on to the next slide, there's a few sort of research archaeology type projects that have been led by academic partners. So there's the SEER in the North Isles being led by Wessex Archaeology. Again, because of the pandemic, things that had planned to happen haven't happened yet, but hopefully as things start to ease and restrictions are, as they start to ease, hopefully there'll be presentations, talks, workshops that will help folk in the Isles to engage more with that aspect of our history, and it will look at things like seafaring, shipwrecks, and the sort of cultural heritage of the sea around the North Isles, that kind of things. Then the Orkney Research Centre for Archaeology is leading on a project that's looking at lesser known tombs around the North Isles. And again, it's an opportunity for people to get involved in doing some walkover surveys, learning some research skills, that kind of thing. And hopefully benefit will be too that folk will be more engaged with that aspect of their history, but there might be opportunities to enhance exhibitions and displays in heritage centres, that kind of thing. There's also an oral history project which has been led by Orkney Research Centre for Archaeology with Dr. Tom Rendell, and as you'd expect, that's exploring the cultural history of the North Isles through the spoken word. Again, that's been delayed, but hopefully, as things start to improve, we'll see a few interviews start to happen, and it involves members in the Isles being involved in that project too. So hopefully that will be up and running soon. The next slide is just showing a lot of images of the there's lots of different projects. There's things like traditional skills. The aim is to protect and promote some of the skills like dry stone dike building, hand and machine knitting. In Papua Westry in particular, there's been events in trying to conserve the traditional way of building sea defences. Another handcraft, things like straw work for the Orkney chair, things like that. So again, hopefully as restriction ease, there'll be things like that we can move ahead with too. There's a small grant scheme for community groups to apply for. There's an education project, and within that there's a hopefully the young folk will be involved in building a Westry skiff, and there's a traditional red phone box project which involves community groups adopting the traditional red phone boxes for BT, and there's funding through our scheme to see them renovated, and hopefully they'll become little mini visitor clubs or heritage route posts, that kind of thing. And if I move on to the last slide, we have a number of projects with each of the heritage centres across the North Isles, and they vary a lot. For some it involves funding to do some work on the buildings where their heritage centres are, like for example in North Ronaldsay it's the new kirk there that there's funding towards improving that building so that the environmental conditions of it are inside for their archive material. In other islands it's improving displays and exhibitions, for example in Stronsay, that are taking on a new building, so some of the funding will be used to develop new displays and exhibitions from that new centre. And in Westry, for example, it's funding to help the Heritage Trust to do a new volume of a publication on the each of the houses and the history of the houses in the island. And we have done a little bit of, I suppose, training and development with the heritage groups, getting some expert speakers in and having follow-up sessions on Zoom and things like that. Over the winter we did a bit of that, and previously we had met all together in Landy at the time when we could before COVID, and I think that was a really nice way to get a lot of the groups together to kind of see what Sandy had to offer, learn from each other and get to know each other, I suppose, and just realise that they're not facing all their challenges or opportunities or whatever, they're not on their own. So there's been a bit of that too, and as Anne-Marie said, we've kind of been the conduit for the North Isles heritage groups getting involved in this virtual reality project. I think that's as much as I'm going to say about the NELT scheme really. We've got a website, we have an email address that's just info@nelts.co.uk, so if anybody wants to ask anything more they can just get in touch. So I think we'll move on to what everybody I'm sure is here to hear about, is the heritage group centres themselves and their collections. So I'm going to go to Westry first. I'll just introduce there's two folk on here for Westry. Alistair McVicker is the director of the Westry Heritage Trust. He's been a resident of Westry for 17 years. He's originally from Argyll, with strong links to the island through his wife Liz, whose parents were both from Westry. Awareness of rapid changes occurring in local heritage stimulated the interest in the local heritage centre, recording and preserving information on past and developing heritage. He worked on procedures to achieve full museum accreditation status for the Heritage Centre, obtained in 2017 as a national recognition of the high standard being achieved. And it'll be Ailsa that's delivering this presentation. Ailsa Cedar is born and bred in Westry. Her connection to the Heritage Centre comes through her mother, who was a key person in getting the Heritage Centre up and running. Both Ailsa and her mother worked on the island magazine Talk, which was Ailsa's mum's idea. The money raised through sales and advertising brings in about 25% of annual revenue needed to keep the Heritage Centre running. And just as a bit of background to Westry, it's an island of about 550 people, where around 100 people's in the school, and the main industries are farming and tourism. So if I could just hand over to you, Elsa.
Okay, thanks very much, Valerie. Before I start the presentation, which should last about 10 minutes, no more, if you have any questions on any of the presentations that are coming up from the 4 different islands, please use the chat facility. You should find there's a button there where you can type in your question. And then at the end of each presentation, we'll allow about 5 minutes so we can discuss your question and hopefully give you some relevant answers. We're presenting from the Heritage Centre. Information on the past and current heritage of Westry through the ages has been assembled in the Westry Heritage Centre, located right in the centre of Peterwell Village. If you ken Westry at all, it's right alongside the hotel, which makes it the ideal location, and there's plenty car parking too. Being awarded a 4-star visitor attraction and full accredited museum status is indication of the high standards that's been achieved by the volunteers here. Through professional displays and an extensive collection of artefacts and information, the heritage of Westry, through history, is displayed and made available for research in 2 large exhibition areas. One is an historic hall, and that's the one, I was going to say that's the one you can see behind me, but that's the one you can see on the screen in front. It's actually the modern extension. The two complement each other very well, and as well as large panels describing the culture and the history of Westry, also a chance for folk to sell their local crafts as well, which is also popular, and the Heritage Centre raises a small amount of money as a percentage of the sales of that too. We have a media room with DVDs and videos, for example, of the kelp industries, fishing and farming, and also about a year ago we started doing another group started doing a fortnightly podcast called Wireless Westry, and so CDs of that are now being kept here too, because very quickly they will become an archive item that folk want to listen to too. We also have an archive room holding around 8,000 catalogued photos of local people, events and industry extending over 100 years, together with genealogical data in digital form. Okay, next slide please. Heritage does not stand still and continues to evolve, and in her book, local teacher Elsa Rendell perfectly captured just who the past influences the future. Just as ripples caused by a stone thrown into a pool keep spreading outwards, so no event is an end in itself, but continues to leave its mark on future history. And this gave the inspiration for the spiral layout in our next slide, which is a timeline that occupies the whole end wall of our modern exhibition room. Over 20 boards summarise major events in Westry, from prehistory through the Neolithic ages and Viking times, the change of the local economy from largely subsistence to cash-based with the introduction of the steam ferries, covers things like the visit of the Queen in 1960, right through to current industries of farming, fishing and fish farming. And in the past we had a really big display every year, which we've pulled back a wee bit for that, but we've had various groups and individuals, and the school have been involved, particularly with the World War I project a couple of years ago. There was a lot of input for the school there, so we have good links to the school. We could only select a few items for illustration here, so moving on to the next slide please. We're looking at the prehistory of Westry. The geology of Westry largely reflects the ancient location of the area south of the equator within a shallow lake that was called Lake Orkney, with sedimentary rocks, the prominent resulting substrate. And many Arcadians are very vexed that Westry is now still doing at the equator with a warmer climate. This prehistory is well represented in the centre by a collection of geological specimens and fossils, all collected in Westry, which won a UK-wide LASMO Geological Challenge Award in 2009. The fossils we have on display include fish specimens. I've hinted what really hard on saying fish, because anybody that lives in Westry knows that Westry folk don't speak about fish at all and being very proper. We would actually speak about fish. We're just waiting for the rest of the country to catch up with the fact that this is the correct way to pronounce it. But in the meantime, we have fish specimens and they've all been identified right to the species level, and we have specimens of representative plants. The geological specimens we have represent the wide range of different fossils found in Westray, and they've all just been collected with the walks along Westray's many beaches. Next slide, please. We're moving to speaking about the Neolithic period, and this is where Westray Wife. People living in Westray around 5,000 years ago in the Neolithic period have left us some superb examples of their artistic talents. The Westray Heritage Centre is proud to display 2 artefacts, both of which are of international importance, and this is for PD Westray Wife, who's really only about 4 centimetres tall. So she's a lot bigger on the screen than what she is in real life. She's really quite tiny. She's a small figurine, 4 centimetres in height, carved in sandstone. And this is the first carving of a human form to have been found in Scotland, and is the earliest depiction of a human face found in the United Kingdom. 3 other broken or weathered figures have since been found in the same Westray archaeological investigation, making Westray a unique focus for this form of art. Next slide. The complex spiral and lozenge design of the Neolithic Westray stone is the finest example in Scotland, and was probably part of a tomb destroyed in tea history when an Iron Age house was built on the location. We actually have this in our entrance foyer of the Heritage Centre, the foyer that links the older hall and the new display room. A detailed examination by a university professor confirmed that the grooves had all been made using stone tools. Next slide, please. Oh, I think we've skipped one there. Ian, we should have... Try the next, we're in the rock. Doesn't matter, I'll talk about the Viking period, and you'll just have to pretend that you can see a small Viking comb. Westray was of major importance in Orkney in Viking times, featuring extensively in the Orkney Norse saga. Archaeological digs have unearthed plentiful evidence that in that period of history, including remains of houses, churches, and a fishing station at Quaigro. And Quaigro has now been consolidated and opened for public viewing. The Vikings' influence on the local culture can be seen, for example, in workplace names, and there's also an influence on genetics and its influence on the economy, and all of these are well documented. But not all discoveries of artefacts are from professional studies, and sometimes chance finds turn up treasures such as the Broch Viking fishtail type comb, and this was found in 2017 by a Westray resident digging in his garden. It was made in the 13th or 14th century and probably in Norway from reindeer. Could you try going back one new please, Ian? Because I think we've skipped. That's it, thank you very much. And this is looking a wee bit about Westray's built heritage in the Middle Ages. And this is Nowton Castle, which is now ruined. It was built around 1560 for Gilbert Balfour. He was master of Mary Queen of Scots' household and was also implicated in the murder of Mary's second husband, Darnley. He was universally hated wherever he went. And you can tell by the fact that it's got 71 gun holes dotting its walls that it would have provided him with some protection, but it shows his mentality that he was very much thinking he was going to be attacked, although they were never used in anger. Other important architectural features in Nowton include the large, unsupported arched ceiling of the lower hall and the impressive entrance stair. And the castle is popular with both locals and visitors. It's sometimes used as a venue for small concerts, as the acoustics in the downstairs hall are excellent, although occasionally you do have to avoid drips of water on your head, but it's worth it. It's also a very popular site for wedding photography, whether up inside the castle or the beautiful archway we have going into it. Next slide, please. We'll go back to the boat that you were seeing earlier. As an island, Westray has had, and of course continues to have, a close association with the sea, and this is reflected in the information that we hold here in the Heritage Centre. In the mid to late 1800s, Westray had a major processing and export trade of dried salt cod directly to continental Europe, including to Spain, and that was used on top sailing schooners with Westray crews. These, together with other local vessels, were depicted in graffiti drawings, paintings and carvings on big wooden panels from a disused barn at Gallowhill, which were saved and then incorporated into the structure of our new wing of our Heritage Centre. With graffiti images totaling approximately 50 ships included on these panels, this provides a unique and nationally important assemblage of ship graffiti from that period. And there is to be a series of art pieces placed in North Isles ferry waiting rooms, and the design for the Ratness terminal here in Westry will be made from what can be discovered about these examples of graffiti and other boat graffiti that's been carved into rock faces on the side of Ferry Hill. And this is just one example of how our local history helps to influence the present. Next and final slide, please. I think you're just going to have to pretend that you can at this stage see the 360-degree video image for Nuke Lighthouse. I'm hoping that Ian will get that up and running as I'm talking. Westry now has much to attract visitors. It's a dynamic working island with approximately 560 residents involved in farming, fishing, fish farming, tourism and bakery, along with its supporting industries. Currently, there are over 100 school-aged children, so the demographics of the island are really pretty well balanced. We have a wide range of walks on hills and coasts, which take in rocky beaches and sandy bays. When I was a teacher, I used to take the kids down to the craigs, that's what we call the cliffs, on the west side of the island, because you can see in action how you know, your rock stacks, your arches, your caves are all formed there. The spectacular 76-metre or 250 feet high cliffs up at Nuke Lighthouse are home to Orkney's largest seabird colony. Here we are, and you can see that just as I speak, with a wide range of seabirds, including guillemots, kittiwakes, razorbills, and puffins nesting on the ledges. And the local name for guillemots in Westry is Axe, an A-A-K, Axe, and that is what nickname every island throughout and parish throughout Orkney has its own nickname, and Westry folk are Axe. And still at the end of our North Isles sports get together, when the boat leaves the host islands pier, you'll hear folks shouting back and forth Axe and Limpets and shouting the nicknames back and forth, which is really nice. So Alistair and I hope you've enjoyed seeing a little of the Westry Heritage Centre and the Westry, the history and culture of the island of Westry. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in using the chat facility, and we'll do our best to answer them for you. Anne-Marie, I'm hoping you'll be able to see if there's anything on the chat facility, because we can't see that.
Just check, yeah, of course, I'll just check that. Okay, chat. Okay, so there's a question here from Isabel Fury. I'm still trying to find the property lost in history that belonged to my mum's family, White in Scotland. Her dad was Duncan White and she was named Isabel Carson White. And we have another question here from Anne Robertson. Sorry, so I'm working off my phone here and it's not. You just bear with me.
While you're looking at that, I'll just answer Isabel's query. If you've got any query about things like that, or genealogy, or relatives who used to live in Westry, if you're on Facebook, please go to the Westry Looking Back page or the Westry Genealogy page, because folk there, we've got 3 or 4 that are super sleuths when it comes to figuring out where folk used to be or what happened. So I would suggest, Isabel, that would maybe be your first port of call to try that, because I can't directly answer that question, I'm sorry, but we do have folk online who would be able to do that. If you're not on Facebook, please find a friend who is and see if you can get an answer that way. Right, Anne-Marie, was there another question?
Yes, so there's another question here from Anne Robertson from Facebook. Is any interpretation in the heritage centres offered in languages other than English?
that would be a challenge that maybe we're needing to work at, because most of our interpretation is currently in English. I'd be interested to know if there were any particular languages that were thought appropriate.
Rudimentary French.
Yeah. But meanwhile, all the any panels that are typed up, and yeah, all the displays are currently in English only. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Ilsa. And there's one last question here. Are there more photospheres you could show us?
Sorry, what was that? I missed the beginning of that, Anne-Marie.
Are there more photospheres you can show us? So I'll maybe ask, we might sort of route that question to Ian. Ian, I don't know if you have any more photospheres.
I think I can do something on that. If you go into YouTube and put in Westray Heritage, you would see a whole series of material that was taken with the 360-degree camera. There are a whole series here, including the pictures of the lighthouse and the cliffs, but other aspects of Westray with the 360-degree camera are in the YouTube on that area.
That's great. Thank you very much, Alistair. And we've just got another 2 questions that have come in. So what days are the Westray Heritage Centre open from next month?
They're open right now. They're open every day of the week. On Sundays, it's just in the afternoon. Monday is 11:30 till 5, and then every other day it's open from, I think, 10 till 12 and 2 till 5. So we are fully open every single day. Come any afternoon and it'll be open.
Great. Okay, and I think this is our last question. So is there any plan to sort the road up to Orkney Lighthouse?
The short answer to that is no. It needed
No.
to be done, but nobody really wants to take it on because it's such a ramp task. So
I was just basically, so
my advice to you would be, if you don't want to take your car up, which is quite understandable, we took it up a couple of weeks ago and we crawled up at about 3 miles an hour. If you don't want to do that, book yourself on for a tour with Karen and Andy Payne at West Track Tours, and they'll bring you up in the minibus, and that's it. And they'll even kind of do a half-day tour, so you don't have to book on for a whole day, and that's a good way to save the sump for your car.
great. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions that have come in for Ailsa and Alistair. And so, Valerie, I'll maybe hand over to you now and you can introduce our next speaker. And thank you very much, Ailsa and Alistair. That was a really fascinating presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so up next is Sharpensea, and our speaker here is Louise Hollenrake, who came to Sharpensea 35 years ago. She's worked in her own business as a holiday provider, a tour operator and guide, focusing on the things that make Orkney such a special place: the variety of birds and other wildlife, the wealth of history and archaeology, its civilised way of life and the certain values of people. She's enjoyed being part of a small island community in itself, a unique experience. So I'll hand over to Louise. I think probably it's film footage that she's going to show, but Louise, if there's anything you want to say ahead of that, I'll hand over to you if you can unmute. Are you able to come off mute, Louise? Bottom left.
Okay, right.
Lovely, can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, our Heritage Centre is closed at the moment because we're going to get some work done inside this summer, hopefully, and possibly going into next summer. So, because it's closed, we did some work outside the Heritage Centre with items that are there. So the first one of these, and we made video clips. So the first one of these is, I think it's Edith, who's going to talk about one of the exhibits, which is a silver lapwing.
So here we are in.
But I don't know how to get that. Oh no, this is the last one. Okay, this is inside the Heritage Centre, and there should be a bit of sound with it.
When I was going to school, we took part
We've got a bit mixed up here. We're getting clips of all of them.
laughing competition, and this is a trophy here that the school won. And to win this competition, we had to make a nature diary. And we start off by collecting specimens for an inward diary. We went out for a walk and you recorded what you'd seen when you were crossing the fields. Maybe you would see wild ducks, you might find a nest with eggs in it, and sometimes we find birds' nests. Do you know about blackbirds? There's blackbirds in nests in trees. And we collected specimens. I've got some eggshells here that were from a curlew's nest that had hatched. And this diary was kept for a few months, and then we entered our diaries into this George Arthur Memorial Competition. And the Shaphamsea school was very lucky. We won the George Arthur Memorial Competition, the silver lapwing, on 4 occasions in the 1960s. And the first person that won was Joyce Grote, and then I won it, and then Alan McCarthy won it, and then the year after that, George Gray won the trophy. And we were also lucky in that we learned a lot about nature through doing this competition, and the teacher at that time was Donald McInnes, and he was very good at explaining and making it all very interesting for us. So when the trophy was presented to the school, the prize winners actually got books from the RSPB prize. Do you think about the lessons you got here?
No.
They'll be coming.
Yeah.
They'll be coming. Oh look, 4-leaf clover. That's another thing that we class as being lucky.
Never spotted any. No, you should like some because they're super lucky too.
The birds that I think are different, we saw lots and lots of flocks of lapwings in the 60s on the fields. But now when you go along the road, you see lots of pheasants and geese, and we hardly ever saw pheasants or geese all those years ago. And another bird that used to always arrive here on Shaphamsea shores in May was the terns. And you don't really see that many terns now.
Edith mentioned the RSPB, and they have these lovely little birds, and you can put it on your clothes. Oh, can you see it properly?
An oyster catcher.
Yeah. And you see, it's got a big red bill and red legs, and they're very noisy. So actually, you might be an oyster catcher in disguise, don't you think? And I've got this for you as well, which is a lucky shell. Have you got one of those already? It's a lucky shell called a grotty bucky. You see, that's an oyster catcher, which is a really nice loud bird, and this one is a lapwing, and it's called that because its wings make a noise when it's flying. I think that's gorgeous the way it shines in the sun.
The George Arthur Memorial Trophy, the silver lapwing, was won by Shaphamsea pupils during the 1960s, and it's now on display in the Shaphamsea Heritage Centre, along with the photographs of the 4 local pupils who won it during the 1960s.
One of the things we house in Shaphamsea Heritage Centre is a model of a broch and a Neolithic village. We do that because Shaphamsea has a broch, one of the best 3 or 4 in Orkney, after the 2 on mainland that are the most visited and the one on Rousey. But here, ours is called Burston Broch, and it was looked at by archaeologists and made safe for visitors, so it's open to the public. That was done in 1994, and these are pictures taken then or just after that renovation. It wasn't excavated as such, but they did leave it open to the public. So it's a really good broch. It's got the 3 to 4 metre high walls, and they are typical of the brochs in Shetland and in Orkney, in that they've got features that occur in other brochs. The battlement that goes along that might have supported a roof. They have passages inside which you get into there. The gateway is a big block of stone as a lintel, and it has holes in the wall inside where defensive structures could have been put to keep the door closed. We don't really know what brochs were for, and one theory, it used to be thought that they were defensive, and that because they are all by the sea, they were defending against seaborne invaders. But actually was later realised that that isn't the case, and Burston fits with that new theory, or middle theory, in that the vulnerable parts, the doorway and the hut circles that went with a broch, they're all on the seaward side. And the main defences, the big ditch and bank, are on the landward side. So then people thought maybe they were defending themselves against their neighbours. But the latest, well, one of the late theories is that it wasn't really defensive, it was more a statement of power. So if you had this massive structure built by you in your area, then you shouldn't be messed with. And it's been likened to Balfour Castle in the Victorian era, because there was no need for Balfour Castle to be defensive, no need for all the defences around our harbour that are there, but it was a statement that you were in the area of somebody who was important. These are steps in the wall, and the steps go right up to the top in some brochs. This is the model of the broch that was made by some students at the school, and this was modelled on the broch of Musa, which is the most intact broch left in the Northern Isles. It's in Shetland, and so the children used this as a model to show what our broch may have been like. And these are the hut circles where people lived in conjunction with the broch, and then a wall around those. We've got the passage that goes up inside the walls, the inner and the outer walls, and it's steps that go right up to the top, and we have that, and Musa also has that. And the walls themselves really thick, and that was one of the things that made it seem defensive. So they're very, very massive structures, and that's probably why they've survived, most of them. There are a lot in the Northern Isles, Orkney and Shetland, and also a few in Caithness. But they're really a typical Orkney and Shetland, Northern Scotland feature. The group of young people that made this model also made a model of a Neolithic village. The broch is Iron Age, so that dates from about 500 BC to 500 AD. The model of the village is based on Skara Brae, which is 5,000 years old. And the children made it so that you could look inside these as well. So this is one of our prize exhibits. So here we are in Shetlandsea Heritage Centre, which is housed in the old Victorian smithy. Here we've got a mock fireplace, and beside it one of our exhibits is a very old Orkney chair. You can see that it's got the straw work, and the straw work has been handled. People have leaned on this, and so it's got slight damage. Here is a beautiful repair on the arm of the chair where it's been damaged, and then it's been repaired with string whipping. This chair has a drawer. Not all Orkney chairs have a drawer, and the myth is that the chairs with the drawer were for the ladies to put their knitting and have it to hand. But this actually also has the illicit bottle. But of course, nobody knew about that. This middle chair, it's a beautiful little thing, and so it's just there beside the granny's chair. And here we have some more examples of Orkney stroll work, baskets or cubbies. This is a cubby. This one is an oval one, which makes it a luppy. Beautifully strong and well made. And then here we have, tongue-in-cheek, modern version, a cubby made from binder twine or baler twine. And that also is very strong and will last a very long time. It would have been useful for all manner of things. Here we have two heather baskets. Lovely, beautifully made and very strong. This has some land working equipment, and these are peat cutting items, peat knife, and then the tuskers and the paddle or spade. We go further round and we have some tools for doing the neeps and all the agricultural work, a hay rake and forks, and then into a scythe and other equipment here. So this will be displayed much more beautifully when we get the renovation of this building underway. We have a variety of horseshoes and other metalwork. And in this corner we have one of the forges that was in the smithy. There's another one downstairs, and all the equipment for doing the horseshoes. And here on the wall, some photos of a smith at work. We have an extremely good collection of photos that was made in the 1980s, and they're all presented in black files here and catalogued, lots of them. So here we have some nautical things, the chart and some fishing gear and compasses. We're round to the fireplace again, and we have some sewing and knitting equipment. This is a pincushion made out of a cow's foot, and a few other eccentric things that you might find on one of the old mantelpieces.
That was great, Louise. Thank you very much. It's a another very interesting presentation, and I really like the format as well of the 3 short videos. It worked really well. Again, if anyone has any questions for Louise, if you could add those to the comments box. And I think, Louise, we've got possibly one question that has come in so far. If you just bear with me, I'll just pull it up. And this is again for Isabel Fury. And this question may be for both Westray and Chappensey. But can we trace island inhabitants from Viking or Saxon landings?
Hi, it's Ailsa here in Westray. Again, we don't have, as far as I know, there's not a database of that, but we quite often see folk discussing this on Facebook. We have 2 dedicated sites. The one that would probably have most used to be Westray Genealogy. And the Westray Genealogy one, you do find folks saying, oh, I've got such and such a thing. It shows up in Ancestry, you know, or I've had my blood test and it shows to be, you know, 10% Viking. So that would be the best, but we don't have, Alistair, don't have anything, no, we have nothing about that in the Heritage Centre, but the Facebook page, Westray Genealogy, would probably be best.
The local folklore here as well, and it's goes on through to the present day. There's a group of people in Westray called the Spaniards, and there's a part to some of the buildings in Westray were originally believed known as the Spaniards' houses. Mm-hmm. What the story behind that is that one of the Armada boats was wrecked, probably either in the North Isles or in Fair Isle, and some of the crew actually ended up settling in Westray at that time, and the bloodline is still here, and you can see it in dark eyes and slightly swarthy skins, so which is atypical of the North Isles.
If I can just come in there as well, that we don't have written records going back to the Viking period of individual families, but some of the surnames are Norse, and some of those people appear in the very earliest written records, and the families are still here. One family called Meason in Chappensey, Meason, were in the farm of Frustigarth, where they still are, in 1595. So we do know that there are some very long-term residents here.
That's great and very helpful. Thank you, Alistair, Ailsa and Louise for jointly answering that question. So Louise, there's a couple of comments that have come in here. One is, thank you, Louise, that was fascinating. And could you say a bit about the book in the first video?
Yeah, certainly. The book was Edith's nature diary that she did as part of that project, the competition, and she was a school girl at the time, and it obviously meant a lot to her, and so she's kept it, and so that is sometimes on display in our Heritage Centre, but not with our other natural history items.
Okay, thank you, Louise. And sorry, I'll just need to go back. No. Can you just bear with me? I'm just having issues getting back into the chat. Louise, I think that was just one of my questions. I think you've answered it. I was just wondering, that book, it looked a beautiful nature diary, and I was just wondering if it is exhibited in the Heritage Centre. Can people hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, you can.
There is a question. What sort of diet would the Broch dwellers have had? Do you know much about that, Louise?
Well, I think you have to go back to the Neolithic, really. The Neolithic people 5,000 years ago appear to have had a very good diet, very varied, lots of things that we would consider to be you know, luxuries nowadays like oysters and lobsters and things like that. In the Bronze Age, which came between the Neolithic and the Broch people, there was a climate deterioration and everything about life deteriorated in that time. So in the Iron Age, they probably weren't as well off and didn't have, and somebody's just put, the Neolithic was a good time to live, I think. That's my view anyway. Yeah. So I think things were less settled in the Broch period in the Iron Age than they were in the Neolithic.
Great. Okay, Louise, I'm just conscious of time. Thank you very much. And I think that is all the questions that have come in. So, Valerie, if I could hand it back over to you to introduce our next speaker.
Yeah, sure. So we're moving across to Sandy now. And it's Myra Stockton that will be presenting from Sandy. Myra came to Sandy in 1974 to teach upper primary at the island school. From the early days, her interest in the heritage and culture of Ireland was introduced to her through local projects studied with the pupils. When the heritage group started in Sandy, Myra joined, and for the past several years she's been the chair of the group. This has seen Myra, along with other members, setting up a heritage centre, firstly on a temporary basis for a year at Ayers Rock and then 4 years at Westcote, which was Myra's previous home. Finally securing funding for a permanent premises at the old Temperance Hall in Lady in the centre of the island in 2014. An area of particular interest for Myra is her study of the shipwrecks around the island, which to date she's researched over 200. So thank you, Myra. I'll hand over to you. Can you unmute, Myra, bottom left of the screen?
Right, sorry. Thank you, Valerie, for the introduction. I've concentrated for this afternoon on 10 individual artefacts, and as an introduction, the first photograph, please, is of the Heritage Centre, and Valerie has already said that it was opened in 2014. It's in the old Temperance Hall. The actual area that we have is the stage area. The hall that was behind is still 2 units. We find the Heritage Centre in the middle of the island in the area, the village of Lady. And when we opened the Heritage Centre, we concentrated on 4 main areas, which as follows was a natural history area, archaeology, an area in connection with the sea, and an area in connection with farming. And one of the things we had done was to make signage. So the first signage, please. So one of the 4 main areas is nature on land, links and shore. And for this presentation, I decided to do 2 items from each of the areas and a further 2 miscellaneous ones. Next slide. This is a picture of what we call the Crosskirk Vole. On different Orkney islands, the Orkney vole has evolved, and there's slightly varying different characteristics. For example, in the size of the skull and the teeth. I think the first study on voles was done actually at Louise in Chappensey, a minister there, Minister Bury, I think his name was. But here we are, and that was in 1800s, but here we are in 1911, when there was a research done on the sandy voles around the Crosskirk area. And there are in fact 5 subspecies of voles in Orkney, of which the sandy vole is one. And the sandy vole and also the Orkney vole are both much lighter in colour than the mainland of Orkney, I should say, variety. And of course, the biggest prey would be, and still is, to a lesser degree, the short-ear owl, on which, you know, they could eat up to 2,000 voles a year. I think my cats are making up for the lack of short-eared owls on Sandy. Next slide, please. Now, you wonder why there's a bit of driftwood shown. Well, in fact, you don't actually see too well, but this is a piece of driftwood showing beaver marks. So, and this was found on the point of Elsness, once at Isthmus, in 2015. And you might then raise the question, what, beavers? But of course we don't have any in Orkney. But what we do have is many items washed ashore from North America, having arrived on the North Atlantic drift. And familiar to many in Orkney would be the large heart-shaped Molucca bean or sea heart, and that's from the tropical vine of the monkey ladder tree, and coming mainly from the Caribbean area. And but more up to date on, if we have done beach cleans on the island throughout the year, which we call here bag the bruck, not bag the rubbish, bag the bruck. And it was interesting to note when I did them with the children on one of the beaches on Sandy, that for a while there seemed to be lots of batteries from Russia and emergency water rations from Norway, which we found quite interesting. Next slide, please. This is actually a quote from Raymond Lamb, a former Orkney County archaeologist, and he maintained that Sandy archaeology has been the richest landscape. It has the richest landscape in Orkney. Next slide, please. This is what we call the Appy House stone, and it is a Christian picture slab found under the floor during renovation work on a nearby house in Lady Village, aptly called Appy House, so that's why it's called Appy House stone. It was found in 2011, and after the stone was sent south for conservation, it was returned to Orkney and is now on loan to us. This view of the stone shows carved crossed and mysterious animals, and on the reverse side there is a triple spiral. It possibly originally stood upright and came from one of the many chapel sites nearby on Sandy. We have a record of over 24 chapel sites, and this possibly came from the two nearest ones is Magdalene Chapel, or it certainly could have come from the Colligarth region, the chapel down there. Next. This is a rune stone, a Viking rune stone, and it was discovered in 1995 during the rebuilding of a collapsed dry stone dyke. And one edge of it is showing the Norse runes, and this is a broken fragment of a group of words. The sandy stone, we got it deciphered for us, the sandy stone bears the name of the engineer, Oskati or Askati, and the final R being the start of the word resist, which means carved. So in other words, the stone was carved by a chap, Viking chap called Oskati. Next, The third area is entitled At the Turn of the Tide. Next. This is the Johannes Bell. It came from the Johannes was an immigrant ship sailing from Bremen to Baltimore in 1861. And the ship ran aground in the bay between Tresnes and Newark at Araby. Luckily, all 173 passengers and crew came safely ashore. And they were distributed throughout the island among various farms and actually resided on the island for a month until another vessel was dispatched from Germany, the Anna, and the immigrants continued their journey. But as a thank you to the island, they left the ship's bell behind, and this had hung for many years in the bell tower of the Cross Kirk. And at the moment it is on display at the Heritage Centre as part of this display on shipwrecks, which I put together in 2018. Thank you. Next. One of the other artefacts of the seafaring items that we have on display is this lovely wheel. This is the wheel from the Vanja, which is a Swedish cargo ship carrying phosphates. And until quite recently, it formed a decorative part of a gate in the house in Kettletoft on Sandy, but it was gifted to the Heritage Centre. The Vanja sailed from Florida en route to Sweden when it floundered at White Mill Point on the island. And this was on the 14th of October 1939. And most people, I would imagine, in Orkney would recognise that date because it is the same date, 14th of February 1939, when the Royal Oak was torpedoed and sunk in Scapa Flow. Next, please. Westray might be called the jewel of the north, but Sandy is the granary of the north. And so we have this area in the farming. Next. And part of the farming display, and of course before tractors, horses were the main power for agriculture and for transport. And this is one of a pair of collar harnesses which are on display in the centre, along with the rest of the tackle and horse brasses. Next. There are of course many farming implements and machinery down through the centuries, and this one, it's called a seed fiddle, which has been loaned to us, and it was probably in use in the 1950s. It was so named after the fiddle-like action required to distribute the seed. So that's the 8 from the 4 main areas, and I've got 2 miscellaneous items, as I have said. And next, please. And this shows we're lucky to have actually a selection of garments, not least a jacket worn by Sir Peter Maxwell Davies, who lived on the island. But this jacket with the jet buttons on display in the Heritage Centre once belonged to one of the Horwood ladies of Skar, and the Horwoods owned the West Stove estate from the 1870s, and it then was sold in the 1919. Sorry, it was sold off in 1919. Next, please. Adjacent to the Heritage Centre, this is a typical croft. The croft was given to the Heritage Group in 2011, and since then we have filled it with authentic furnishings from 100 years ago, and all the items have been given from places around the island. And this is traditional two-roomed butt and ben with box beds in each room. Next. This is the view of the butt end, whereas the kitchen area was the ben end. Sorry, completely wrong there. The butt end was the kitchen, sorry. And whereas the ben end is shown here is a room where one would entertain their guests. Next. This is an old Orkney rocking chair, which is now sitting in the ben part of the croft, which lies, as I said, adjacent to the Heritage Centre. And some of you may be familiar, and certainly from this afternoon, with Louis' presentation showing the very familiar straw-backed Orkney chairs. This one is a rocker, and it's made entirely of wood, and the source of the wood was possibly supplied from one of the many shipwrecks around the island. And with that, this ends my presentation on the 10 artefacts from the Heritage Centre. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Myra. That was another excellent presentation, and again, just a really nice different format of talking about the 10 different objects and linking those to the different themes. So I'll just go in to check if there are any questions in the message box. And hopefully I won't get kicked out this time, which keeps seeming to happen. So there's one question here, Myra. I never knew there was a butt and a ben end. Why are they called that?
I think I might pass that over to Ailsa. I've never actually looked into the actual wording before, to tell you the truth.
Well, I'm afraid to say that when I was listening to Myra, this stuff on the butt end and the ben end, I've heard them. I can't tell you why they're called butt and why they're called ben, or why someone was ben the hoose when it was, through the other end. So no, but none the wiser. Maybe once it's
Okay then, this is a question for you, Myra. Which is your favourite object?
Well, it has to be one of the objects connected with shipwrecks, because that is my main interest and what I've studied throughout the years and still studying. And possibly, certainly, what got me started was the Johannes bell being in the church. And that's what started me on shipwrecks. So I must say that will definitely be the main object.
Okay, thank you. And we have got someone that's just added to the chat. I think this is to our button Ben term. The term describes a basic design of outer room conjoined with inner room as a residential building plan. The outer room, used as an antechamber or kitchen, is the butt, while the inner room is the ben. So butt in and ben out. So there we are. Thank you very much who added that to the chat. And there's just a couple of comments that have come in just for our speakers. So Kevin Leary says this was wonderful. Thank you. And where Pitts Nick says, lovely to be transported back to Scotland via this programme from Ohio. Thank you. So we've got some participants from quite far afield, which is which is great. And Myra, I just had one question for you, and I was just wondering if the Heritage Centre just if it is open to the public just now.
At the moment, it is opening partially. The Croft is not opening. Is not open just now because there's so many hands-on items there. But the Sandy Heritage Centre is open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday afternoon, 2 to 5, and Saturday morning 10 to 12 and 2 to 5, and Sunday afternoon 2 to 5 at the moment. But it could change. It could change.
That's great. Thank you, Myra, and great just to hear that that you have reopened. So I think that's all the questions that have come in, and yes, but very informative too in terms of what the term button bed means.
One more question, Anne-Marie.
Sorry, Valerie.
I think there's one question here that's
thank you.
Okay. Is it known which shipwreck the chair might have come from?
No, we don't know, no, because we actually got the chair. We actually borrowed the chair from a place for the Crofters Commission, so that house had been empty for years and years, and I don't have any history on it. But a lot of the houses have various bits and pieces in them, structural wise, from wrecks. The beams in the houses, for example. But for that chair, no, we do not know.
Okay. Thank you, Myra. And now there's just another couple of things that have come in on the chat. So, do you have any publication guides of the Heritage Centre that can be posted to us? And that's from where Pets Nick from Ohio.
Yes, we have quite a lot of publications, leaflet type things that we have done throughout the year, mainly from our ex-ranger, Rod Thorne, and certainly there is one on the Heritage Centre.
Right. Okay. Where if you want to add your address or email address just to the chat, and we can pass that on to our speakers, and they can see if they've got any material that can be posted to you, or possibly signpost you to any links to their website. And we have another comment here from Jim O'Brien. Greetings from Ireland. Thanks to all the presenters. It sounds like a wonderful place. And Isabel Fury, I love museums. I've never been to the Northern Islands. Thank you very much. That was interesting. So I think that's everything I am seeing here. Valerie, is there any other questions coming in at your end?
No, I think that's everything.
That's everything.
And I think we've maybe got an email address, so Myra can follow up with a public.
Yeah, we do. Thank you. Weir has provided his email address. Great. Okay, Valerie, if I could hand back over to you to introduce, I understand it's our final speaker for today.
Yeah, so we're heading to our last stop is Papua Westray. And presenting today from the Kelp Store in Pappy is Jonathan Ford, an island ranger, bird folklorist, dialect collector, director of a Festival of Islands, arts and heritage facilitator, sculptor, writer, performance artist, failed rocket scientist, and perhaps his favourite of all introductions, the guardian of the Ox. In recent years, he's developed many art, science, creative events and workshops exploring island nature, culture and identity. His writing and creative events take in seabirds, extinct and living, and the folklore and history of Papua Westray and remote islands in the north. Jonathan's employed by the Pappy Development Trust and co-directs the Kelp Store Arts and Heritage Centre. So I'll hand over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you very much. I'm on. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
I'll take it as yes.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that I can see my slides? great, brilliant, super duper. Right, so I'm Jonathan, and as Valerie kindly said, I'm broadcasting live from Pappy, from the Kelp Store. Just as a bit of an introduction first, before we get onto the island, I'm the ranger here, the Heritage Ranger, so I have a varying role which includes kind of tours and guided tours and boat trips, but also a kind of responsibility for the heritage as well. So I work as part of the team at the Kelp Store to put on exhibitions and shows. So that's a definite heritage contact to my job as well. So not the traditional ranger. I think my job title was originally Heritage Ranger, so that's what I am. So here's Pappy. I'll take you a little bit through this first. And I guess this will be a little bit different. Well, it just is what it is. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the island, about the Kelp Store, and then I'm going to use the objects as means of taking you out of the Kelp Store and around the island as well. So relating the objects to things around the island, to places, and then back again to the Kelp Store. I think the Kelp Store itself is quite different as a heritage centre in that it is very much a living place, that the things inside it are designed to move out, so we can put on a range of events. And because we don't really have a wide range of artefacts in here, that really it gives a challenge to make it to have a different purpose. So I often think of it as a place where you come to think about and to research things you'd seen on the island, or a place that signposts you out to the rest of the island as well. So that would be my take on the Kelp Store. I'm sure people on Pappy would have a very different one, but that's mine at the moment. Okay, so this is Pappy. Small island, 4 miles long from top to bottom, never more than a mile wide. And right at the very far north end is our highest point, which is Ereval, which is a massive 48 metres above sea level. So the Mountaineering Club has not quite taken off just yet. So skip to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is where I'm broadcasting from, which is the lower blue dot. So that's the Kelp Store on the bottom of Southwick there. Okay, next one. Okay, so this is the Kelp Store, and this probably built in the late 1700s, I think. We don't have a definite date for the building. It's had various uses during its lifetime. Initially, it was a kelp store to store kelp before being exported south. It was built by the Trail family. Then became a fish store, coal store, a smithy, a boat store. And then I think around about 2000, the trust made the building safe and then put in a phase plan to get it back to life again. And when I came in 2015, I was part of the team that worked on the restoration of the project and got it up to date as we are now. Okay, next one, please. So this is the interior of the Kelp Store. As I said, all the displays we made very movable, so everything's on wheels, so we can shift everything in and out and transform the space as quickly as possible. I think all islands are saying that every space has to have at least 10 different uses before it becomes viable, so I think the Kelp Store is exactly like that. So these cabinets were built by Ian Richardson, the boat builder in Stromness, and each one reflects a different part of the island history, from natural history, archaeology, and farming and things like that. Next slide. Okay, and there's one of the cabinets. That's the archaeology cabinet, actually. So this will contain things that you'd be interested in looking at after you'd been to the site. So it would be reports from digs, books that kind of tell you about the context of the archaeology here, and perhaps explore it in a more in-depth way than a basic panel at the site would do. Okay, next, please. Okay, we also have a series of films here as well, made by Mark Jenkins. This is Jesse's Hen, and a little bit of Jesse as well, which again explore the island in a much more probably contemporary way as well. Look at people's lives now in relation to what went on before. Okay, next, please. And it's also houses the Pappy Archive, and the archive here is very much based on houses. So there's a folder for every house on the island, and it's set up, displayed a bit like the kind of the pigeonholes at the post office. So each of the houses is set out, and each one of these folders will contain census records and also images from the people who lived in these houses. And that's very much an ongoing project as well. So we're always looking for more information to come into them. Okay, next. Okay, as well as the exhibition side, we have very much a usable side to the Kelp Store as well, which is a space for workshops, for events, for the band to practice, the choir to practice, and things like that as well. So next one, please. And it always looks better with people in it. And this was from the Oi Festival in 2016, I think. And here we were doing an embroidery workshop, I think. Yeah. So it looks much better with people in it. Okay, next, please. Okay, so I'm going to take you on a very whistle-stop tour of Pappy. Now, usually this would take a day. It's going to take us hopefully about 10 minutes. So it's going to go quick. There'll be lots of slides and a lot of me waffling. So just be prepared for that. So to get to an island, you need to arrive. You can do it 2 ways on Pappy. You can do it by the plane, which you see here, which is the Islander 8-seater plane from Kirkwall, takes 16 minutes and includes the shortest flight in the world between Westbury and Pappy. Next, please. And being an island, the true way to get to an island is by boat. You can do it 2 ways. You've got steamer on Tuesday and Friday, or you can come from Westbury on the Golden Mariana, which Malcolm currently captains, so he'll bring you over that way as well. That's also the school boat, the minister's boat, and the doctor's boat as well, so you never know who might be on there with you. Okay, so that's how you get to an island. Next, please. This is the reason why I came to the island, and this is the Great Ork, and this really takes me into my first object. And you might just see him here. I'll just bring him into shot. Here he is. Try to work out the link of this one. Here we go. So here's the Great Ork, and this is the reason I came to Pappy. It's a long extinct seabird, a big seabird, and I can tell you how big it was because this is an egg from a Great Ork, and this is an egg from a chicken, from one of the Hornley chickens actually. So that tells you a good idea how big they were. So I came to Pappy in 2013 to see where the Great Ork had lived. It's now extinct, they don't live anywhere, but I thought the closest I'd get is maybe a place where they used to live. Okay, and Pappy is one of them. Next slide, please. So this is me when I first arrived, looking much younger and healthier than I do now with the Great Ork. So basically Pappy's link with the Great Ork is that in 1813, the last British breeding pair of Great Orks were taken from here, and that's the last time they bred in the UK. So that was as close as I get to a Great Ork, so that's why I came. And then about a year later, the job came up as the ranger, and I got the job, and the rest is history. Okay, next please. And I relate this to a site on the island, as we'll do with most of the objects we've got here. And the site is Foul Craig, or Seabird Crag, whichever way you want to put it, which is where most of the seabirds nest on Pappy now. And this was the last site of the Great Ork as well. And if you're on a tour of Pappy, this is definitely one place you will come to. Next place, please. Okay, and this is Foul Crag, with a few formers on the top there. Probably in winter, I think, there's not a lot of seabirds around. And for an island which is very flat, this is pretty dramatic, and really when you're up on Foul Craig, you feel like you're on a very different island, a very different place. Okay, next please. This was taken yesterday or the day before, I think, yes. So this is the beginning of Foul Craig at Leapers Geo, and this is Kitty City, where all the kittiwakes used to nest. And I think it's very important that with a heritage centre as well, they do relate things to contemporary issues. And one issue that the Great Ork does bring up is about extinction, and seabirds at the moment are suffering massive decline across the world. I think it's over 70% of the seabirds have disappeared within the last 50 years. So the seabirds we've got now are pretty much on a very kind of thin rope at the moment, and much like the Great Ork may go that way. So I think it's very important that the heritage centres and art centres do address issues which are very contemporary as well. Okay, next please. And that's me with somebody looking for Foul Craig. So it's a good place to be and watch seabirds as well. Okay. Next please. And this is our monument to the Great Ork on Foul Craig. Next, please. Now, it's important to remember, as I say, the seabirds which are here now, and I'll go through the rest of the Ork family. So the Great Ork still has relatives left. All these can fly, the Great Ork couldn't. So we've got puffins. Next, please. Guillemots. This is a bridal guillemot. Next, please. Razorbill, or Coulter-neb, as we would call them. Next, please. And last but not least, the black guillemot, or Teisti, as we would call it, which again is a Norse name. We're talking about things with Norse heritage. Bird names around the North Isles, a lot of them are very much Icelandic or Norwegian names, which have just been slightly different. Okay, and that's brought in by the Norse influence. Okay, next please. Right, and on the way back down to Foul Craig, you might drive past this house, and this was the house of William Fools, who was the person who took the last Great Ork from Pappy. So that's probably the most ignominious house on the island. Okay, next please. So the link between the Great Ork and my next site is that the Great Ork remains were found there, and this is the Great Ork looking at its family tree, which is basically all the bird remains that were found at the Nap of Hower, our Neolithic site on the island. So he's looking for his relatives in there. Okay, next slide please. So if you walk down from Holland Farm, just about 500 yards down to the coast, you'll come to the Nap of Hower. Next please. Which is follow the sign. It's quite easy to find. You don't need a telescope or a long lens, but we'll get there eventually. Okay, next please. So the Nap of Hower was excavated in 1933 by a laird at the time, William Trail. There was a big mound there. People don't really know what was inside it. he thought one day he would have a dig and see what was there. And he found 2 Neolithic houses, which he knew were were Neolithic, sorry. But nobody really believed him at the time. And he did threaten to push the whole lot into the sea at one point, which you can see was quite close at that time. Okay, next please. And this is an image from the dig of the 1930s. Next, please. Okay, and this is today, really. So we've got 2 fantastically well-preserved buildings. Dates back to around about 5,500 BC, so probably the oldest standing house in Northern Europe. 2 buildings joined by a joining tunnel, which is basically a little farmstead. They kept primitive cattle, sheep and pigs. Yeah, fish and birds, quite a wide range of diets, as we were talking about Neolithic diet before. Very good. Okay, next please. And this is the entrance to the, I call it House 1 on the Nap of Haworth, and that was intact when it was found as well. Kept very much like Scarrow Brae, kept intact by the sand that filled it up and covered it over. Okay, next please. Just an interior view from the Nap. Okay, carry on, please. Next please. And there's artifacts within the Nap as well. This is a fantastic quernstone in the Nap, which is in the place it was actually found during the dig as well. And a real kind of touchstone, because you can actually touch something that was held by the people that lived in the Nap of Haworth as well. So that's, for me, that's fantastic to see things actually in their site as well, rather than locked away inside. So, okay, next please. And this is quite important really, because there's a lot of coastal erosion is very important to islands. And this is a photograph by Gunny Moberg, which shows the Nap of Haworth, and then the seawall, which was built in the 1950s to protect it. So without that seawall, then the Nap of Haworth probably would be in the sea by now. And it's also interesting that when the Nap of Haworth was built, where the seawall is now, would all have been land. There would have been no sea there at all. So the climate has cooled, the seas have risen, and the Nap of Haworth has become very much a shoreside thing, but really it was built quite a way away from the sea in the beginning. So a different kind of, a very different view to what we have of it now. And the object which I think I picked out has something to do with that. And one thing they found in the midden at the Nap of Haworth, and they found thousands of oyster shells, but they don't live on Papua anymore. And when the climate cooled, the sea line changed, the shorebed changed, the oysters disappeared. So the midden at the Nap of Haworth is a real sign of climate change, a real indicator of temperatures getting cooler. Okay, next please. And there's a Papua oyster from the Nap of Haworth. And middens are great things, great indicators of time and age and diet and things like that as well. Okay, next please. So there's the Nap as it is today. The fortuitous rainbow. Next please. Walk up the coastline from the Nap and we come to our next little site, which is St Boniface Kirk, and you can just see it on the horizon there, the roof there, standing strong in the storm. And it is an ecclesiastical site, and how Pappy got its name really is when the Norse arrived in probably the 8th, 9th century. They found at least 3 chapels here. So they named the island Island of the Pape, the Island of the Fathers, for the priests who were here then. Okay, next please. And St Boniface Kirk itself is built on a very much a multi-layered site, and that a lot of sites in Orkney, and particularly on Pappy as well, if you find an early Christian site, it's generally been built on an Iron Age site. And St Boniface is exactly saying this is what remains of the Munkahus, which is an Iron Age settlement with a broch as well, and that was much later built upon by the early Christians' centre of power. It's a very logical thing to do. The formers love it now, they just nest all around it. Okay, next please. Okay, a little bit of the broch that still remains there. And again, another sign of coastal erosion, because this is being eroded every day and will soon be lost to the sea. Okay, next please. And that's us investigating the midden on an archaeological weekend we did. It's a fantastic midden because really you can see a whole layering of time, right from the early Christian period all through the Norse period, up until medieval times as well. So you can see what people were eating all the way through, whether it be limpets, whether it be fish, whether it be, you could find anything in there. I did find the remains of a dolphin in there a few weeks ago. Anyway, next please. Okay, and there's the shell midden. Okay, next please. Okay, this is St Boniface Kirk. So this is what you see there is probably 11th century, 12th century kirk. And it's obviously where our main kirkyard as well. So many folk from Pappy are all buried within there. Okay, next please. Inside. Okay, next please. And one of the things they found within the kirkyard that really was a real indicator of the early Christian site was a couple of incised crosses. This is probably the best one they found. It dates back to around about the 7th century. It was found when a grave was being dug on the north side of the kirk, which wasn't until much later they did that. So quite fortuitous that this was found. Okay, next please. And within the kirkyard itself, we also have a hogback stone, which is a Norse gravestone, a warrior gravestone, this is. And this represents a Norse roof, so a longhouse roof, and you can't quite see from the photograph, but there are tiles inscribed into the sides of the kind of apex of the stone. So it's a Norse roof that's placed above you when you're buried, so you're home and safe. We don't know who's buried there. We have an idea that it might be Ronvar Bristolson, who was a Norse Earl of Orkney, who was murdered in Papastronzi and brought to Pappy to be buried, which again lends weight to Pappy being a very important ecclesiastical centre at the time. So Ronvar Bristolson could well be under there. There are other stories, but I won't go into that one. Okay, next please. Okay, this is the doorway into the kirk, which I always like to keep the birds out. Okay, next please. So this is the interior of the kirk, which was restored in the late 1990s, should I say, and brought back to a kind of like an early kind of 17th century with the box pews and the minister within the kirk rather than being in the chancel where he originally was. Okay, next please. More of the kirk. Okay, next please. Right, so we've done the kirk, so on the drive out from the kirk, we come past this house. And I love the fact that this is probably the only locked door on Pappy. This is the rocket house, and this is where the rockets were kept for the Coast Guard when they're using the British Buoy, which is a means of rescuing men from ships by rocket, firing a line to them. So this was the only locked door in Pappy, which I think is a great fact. Okay, next please. I'd love to have a bit of a quiz element as well, and I always ask people what this pole might be. Nobody really ever guesses, but it looks like a ship's mast. And actually it was a practice mast for the Coast Guard and Pappy, who were practicing rescuing men from ships. So they'd fire a rocket to this mast and then practice bringing men back and forth. Okay, next please. And there's two on the island, one near at the rocket house at Kimberland, but also one up on North Hill as well. You can just see the Coast Guard hut in the background. Okay, next please. And one part of the Kelp story is famous the Coast Guard books, which you've got, which is the logs from the Coast Guard, going back to the sort of late 1800s, 1890s. So all the log books for all the men who worked there, all the things they saw, the weather taken, and all the kind of incidents that happened. And the head of the Coast Guard in the early 1900s was Andrew Grote, who's the man on the right here. And he led the crew in the rescue from the ship, the SS Badger, where he rescued 8 of the 9 men on there. And that was the first ever rescue by a British boy from ship to ship. So they fired a rocket from a boat in a storm to the ship that was, I think, running aground on Bowskerry at Westbury, and got 8 of the 9 men off, for which he was awarded the medal he's got there. So that was Andrew Grote. And the archive in the Kelpshaw does have a whole range of photographs that, talk about those times as well. Okay, next please. Okay, this is Wheely's Ting, kind of a lovely coastal, it's a weird thing. It's a weird like structure really. It has a link to St Boniface and the fact that they found medieval fish traps in here, and it may be that the monks from St Boniface were using it to catch fish to feed the community they've got there. So this is Wheely's Ting. Okay, next please. And the object I take from there is, that's when I found it actually, which is the day I found it, but here it is now looking a bit more healthy and cleaned up. This is a deer antler, and very unusual to find one of these on Pappy, and this one dates back to the Bronze Age, which is the last time that deer were actually here. And some people think that Wheely's Ting, because it was very much a tidal pool, was used to slaughter deer, that deer were herded into it, and then because they were hampered by the water, they were slaughtered within the pool. It could be that, we don't really know. But I think this deer antler came from the home of Pappy. Bring the next slide on, please. Okay, so the home of Pappy has got 2 big Neolithic burial cairns on it, and the one at the north end, they found remains of deer antler there. So I think they've washed out of there and come up on the shore. One of the things that the Trust did about 5 years ago now was set up a scheme to take people over to the home of Pappy to see the Neolithic cairns. So they purchased a boat, trained 3 skippers, I was one of them, with Tim and Solon as well. And so we take people over to the cairn and see the island as well. So something that had never been available before. Okay, next please. And this is the Dunter, our boat to take people across. And you can just see the home in the background there. Okay, next please. So this is the biggest cairn on the island. This is the South Cairn, built around about 2500 BC. It's a huge chamber, about 60 foot long. You enter through a ladder down into the chamber, and there's 14 little chambered cairns within it. Next, please. Next, please. Have I frozen? Yeah, there it is. So there's a cairn. And actually, oh, yeah. So this the marker on the cairn, and actually, yeah, that's a ship's marker on there. So, okay, next, please. You can move on one. Okay, so enter the cairn, you climb down a ladder. You can just see the burial chambers on either side there. And then the two end chambers are closed off as well, so you crawl into those spaces. And then this, I think it's the south end of which has got the only Neolithic carvings on Papi, which I think is the next slide. Yeah, so this is one of a range of carvings within the cairn, and these are the only Neolithic carvings. They're about 8 inches by 10 inches. And Antonio Thomas from UHI has just done a survey of all the carvings within the tomb. So so that's going to go into the culture store as well quite soon, so people have information here about the carvings that are there. Okay, next please. And that's the boat journey home, and we're all back safely. Okay, next please. And I think this is the end. Yeah, I thought I'd end with a rainbow on Papi on Southwick, which is the view from the couch store actually, so there you go. So that's me and Papi and the couch store.
That's great, Jonathan. Thank you very much. And what amazing slide to finish on. A stunning coastline and rainbow. But thank you, Jonathan. That was, again, just a very interesting presentation and a great whistle-stop tour of Papa Westray, and just some amazing footage there of the local coastlines and the local wildlife, and also just touching on the local heritage in terms of the it was great actually to see the interior of the kirk. So Jonathan, like our other panelists, I will just check to see if there are any messages that have come in the chat box, and I think we have one. So somebody here said, great to hear about Papa. And I'll just check. So that's the only, which is more a comment than a question. But Jonathan, I'll maybe just ask just while we're waiting for more questions to come in. I think just a similar question actually asked to Myra. Has the local heritage centre that you made reference to and the kirk, are they now open to the public to visit?
So the couch store we're going to open tomorrow, I think.
Great.
So just putting the exhibition up, which is behind me now, and that will be open tomorrow, and it's open 24 hours a day from tomorrow. And the kirk, yeah, the St Boniface Kirk is always open. Again, it's another unlocked door on the island, so that's always open. It's a totally unmanned site, so it's special. So yeah, it's a bit like the Nap of Howrah, it never closes, it's always open.
Yes, yeah. Okay, Jonathan, and thank you for that, and great to hear. So just the centre is reopening from tomorrow. And so we've got a comment in from Julie Cassidy. So great to hear. Sorry, so great to have the opportunity to see these heritage centres virtually. Thank you. And we've got a question here from Jim O'Brien. You mentioned in one of the earlier presentations that some of your work is aided by EU funds. Has this and future work been affected by Brexit? Well, in relation to the Capito project, Jim, that our funding is honoured until the end of the project. So the project is funded at the moment up until February next year, and the project has applied for a funding extension. And because UK partners were part of the original project and partnership, has meant that some of the UK partners have been able to apply to participate in the funding extension. And And then just in relation to sort of future work being affected by Brexit, I think we're still just waiting for a bit of clarity around what is going to replace the EU programmes that UK partners have obviously been able to apply to. So we have another couple of questions that have come in here. So we have another question from Isabel Fury. Are you local people because your accents are not what I would expect from Orkney Islands? But I think, Jonathan, you mentioned that you just moved to the island. So was it 2013?
2015, yeah.
2015. So, yes.
Yeah, I mean, from a kind of Pappy's point of view, I guess there's a whole mixture of, there's still a kind of a strain, a kind of hardcore of kind of local folk here, and then there's people who've been here for 30, 40 years from outside, and then there's a kind of continuing kind of transition of things as well. But I think, I think it brings vitality to the islands. I think it prevents them from depopulating. I think that without this influx of people, that the islands would eventually become abandoned, and that's not too dramatic because it's happened. So I think islands do need that flow through of people with ideas, with enthusiasm, to keep things going. And I think Orkney has always been a place of transition as well, that you have to look at the language, the kind of Norse influence on it, the kind of Scots influence on it. So there's always been people moving through at some point. So which I always think makes people in Orkney so friendly, because they're used to they're used to people coming through and coming in.
And so I've got a comment that's come in from Jim O'Brien, definitely going on halls to Pappy. And another question that's come in here, and this might be for a question for Ian and Alan. Do you have any galleries of these images that we saw on the map earlier?
I think that's a question for Ian. Oh, sorry.
I know that, Alan, we do have the images of all the North Islands. I'm not sure if that is available to the public yet.
Yeah, I think so. I think you can get. I think, Ian, have you got a URL probably?
We could possibly get Ian to add the URL to the chat.
Yeah, that's good. And Jim, maybe I missed this, but I think Jim asked about is any of this work supported by EU funds, and has this and future work been affected by Brexit?
Yes.
There was one we maybe missed there for Jonathan. Why are you so fascinated by the Great Oak?
Oh, sorry, I have missed.
Very good question, actually. Yeah, I'm an artist and sculptor, so I became very obsessed with black and white birds, and I started with the pied wagtail, which I worked on for about 10 years, and then I moved on to woodpeckers, and then the Great Hawk appeared from somewhere, and it was black and white bird, so that's the way I went, and the rest is history.
Great. Thank you, Ian. Ian has added in to the chat the URL for our Cathedral website page, which includes all the gallery images.
I'll just put in a wee plug here, because most islands, if you're on Facebook, most islands have a group that either is, will include photos, or like on Facebook, we've got a Westry Photos page. So I know that's not directly answering the question. And there's also groups like Orkney from the roadside. So if you just need a fix of photos of Orkney, there are some really super photo sites on Facebook for folk to look at.
Great, that's great, Ilse. Thank you. So I think, Jonathan, that's all the questions that have come in. Valerie, do you have anything else that's come in at your end?
No, I think
No,
that's all of
yeah.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, just really now, I think it's just really to end today's event and just to say thank you very much just for our local speakers, Alistair and Ailsa representing Westray, Louise representing Shackensey, Myra representing Sandy, and Jonathan representing Papa Westray. So I think it's quite a nice way to end the week with hearing just about some really sort of fascinating local heritage from the different islands. Today's event, it has been recorded, so if you know of anybody that's missed today's event and would have liked to have attended, then we will be putting up the recording of the event on the Cupido Highlands and Islands Facebook page and also St Andrew's Open Virtual Worlds Facebook page. And I'm aware as well, I think some of our speakers are going to be looking at uploading the recording onto their different websites. So just to say thank you again, just for everybody that's joined today's session, and we hope that you found it interesting, and thank you very much to all of our local speakers. And I'll just hand over to Alan at St Andrews University, who will just say a few final closing remarks.
So thank you very much to Alistair, Ailsa, Myra, Louise, Valerie, Anne-Marie and Jonathan for bringing the heritage that you have, or that you're with, or that you work with. And there's over 80 people in the event overall, and I'm sure a lot more will see it in the future. And I hope that this is your kind of like our first step into live publishing on the internet, and we'll maybe do something similar at some stage in the future, or maybe you'll go off and do something similar in the future. But yeah, and final thanks to Valerie and Anne-Marie for facilitating, and of course for Ian Oliver, who does all of the technical stuff and only really comes to the fore when something goes wrong. And as nothing has gone wrong, it's all gone really smoothly, so we haven't really seen him. Ian, do you want to just show us yourself, Ian, and take a bow? There we go. And I look forward to spending a couple of days in the North Isles, seeing these wonderful centres for real, and hopefully we'll get to a place where we can shake hands and greet each other for real as well. But thank you very much. I know there were challenges along the way, and I think it's great the way everybody stuck with it and overcame those challenges, and now we've got a great record. That's me.
Great. Okay, I think we'll just end by wishing everybody a nice weekend, and thank you very much for joining.
I'll hang around a bit if anybody wants to chat after if any of the panelists want to chat a little bit after the